Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and hopping on the line today. My name is Stefan Jordan with Small Business for America's Future. We're really excited to have you on the line today and be a part of this great discussion with Congressman Horsford. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that we are recording the discussion and have invited members of the media to the call. So that means we are on the record. You may have a quote appear in an article or press release following the event. And since we are interested in making sure the voices of small business owners like you all are heard by our leaders, we also may publicize some clips from the video for recording. So please turn on your cameras if you're comfortable doing so. We'd love to see everyone's faces. And to get us started off here, we're just going to start with a quick video about Small Business for America's Future and the importance of small businesses to our country.
America's small businesses account for half of all private sector jobs and are our country's main engine for employment growth. Without them, the U.S. economy will collapse. Small businesses pulled the economy out of the Great Recession. They can do the same now, but they need our help. Small business needs a strong new voice in Washington, one that will fight for Main Street, one that will make sure policymakers hear the concerns of America's entrepreneurs, and one that will ensure small businesses are at the center of our efforts to rebuild a more equitable economy. We know that the ingenuity, hard work, and determination of America's small business owners can lead to a great recovery. Small Business for America's Future is here to make sure everyone else, including our policymakers, know it too. Join us in the fight for small business and for America's future.
All right. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Renee Johnson, who is a senior advisor to Small Business for America's Future. Renee, take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Stefan, and I'm excited to be here. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm Renee Johnson, and I'm the Senior Advisor to Small Business for America's Future. I'll be moderating our discussion today. Small Business for America's Future is a coalition of Small Business for America's Future is a coalition of business leaders calling for policy that truly benefit America's small businesses. Since COVID-19 hit, we have been strongly advocating for federal relief packages that put Main Street small businesses, their employees, and their communities first. Today, we're joined by Congressman Stephen Horsford of Nevada's 4th District and Small Business for America's Future co-chair Shondell Newsom to discuss the state of Nevada's small businesses 6 months into the COVID-19 crisis. Shondell will make some opening remarks and introduce the Congressman. After the Congressman has spoken and a brief conversation, we will open up the floor to questions from all of you. Everyone should keep themselves muted until we reach the moderated discussion portion of the program. To get into the queue for the discussion portion of the program, attendees can raise their hands if they like to respond. You can raise your hand via the Zoom control panel and click Raise Hand. I will then acknowledge participants. The participant will self-unmute their microphone and speak. Stefan will mute participants if assistance is needed. Now I'd like to introduce Small Business for America's Future co-chair Shondell Newsom. Shondell is a business leader, business owner, and business advocate right here in Las Vegas. Shondell, take us away.
Thank you, Renee. Again, my name is Shondell Newsom, and I own Some New Marketing in Las Vegas in partnership with my wife and my daughter. My daughter is now the primary owner, and I'm the chairman of the board for the Las Vegas Urban Chamber of Commerce and co-chair for Small Business for America's Future. My family-owned business started in 2006 and is now in its 3rd generation and is the recipient of SBA Nevada Family-Owned Business of the Year. We're veteran-owned, minority-owned, and woman-owned. As I stated, my daughter is succeeding me as the primary owner. We're a marketing firm and have 10 to 15 employees at any given time. My story probably sounds very familiar to a lot of you because Nevada is full of entrepreneurs like us. There are 270,000 small businesses representing 99% of all businesses in the Silver State. Collectively, we employ 487,000 people, nearly 100,000 of whom work for minority-owned businesses. The impact of our small business community is enormous. That's why we're here today to speak with Representative Horsford about the state of small businesses in Nevada and what Main Street entrepreneurs can do to advocate in Washington, D.C. for further relief. And I've known Congressman Horsford for a very long time. When he served in the state legislature, he has always been an advocate for small businesses and diversification of our business economy. Let me set the stage for discussion. President Trump declared a national emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic on March 13th. More than 6 months later, the extended crisis has stretched Main Street to its financial limits. A small business survey by the business publication Payments out last week found that 75% of small business owners say that they are struggling with reduced revenue. 39% of small businesses do not have enough revenue to stay open for even a week in the event of a revenue disruption. 42% have reduced payroll to help mitigate the financial impact of the pandemic. And small business owners don't anticipate this will be over anytime soon. In a recent Small Business for America's Future survey, 80% expect business to be disrupted well into 2021. The question on every small business owner's mind is, what's next? What do our leaders in Washington have in the works to help small businesses, and how can we help get something done? With that in mind, I'd like to introduce my friend, our congressman who represents the Nevada 4th District right here in Las Vegas. Oh, and did I forget to mention that our company, Some New Market, is located in the Nevada 4th District. So he's the representative for our family-owned business. Welcome, Congressman Stephen Horsford.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I appreciate it, my friend, Shondell Newsom. I'm so proud of your accomplishments, not only as a great father and family man, but what you've done as an entrepreneur in starting your own family-run business as one of the certified veteran, minority, and now women-owned business in our community. And it's been great to see your business grow and develop. And thank you, Renee, for your leadership and for including me today with the Small Business for America's Future. You know, this is a very important discussion we're having today on the state of small businesses 6 months into COVID-19, which we know has impacted every family, every worker, every business across this country. And we've got a lot more work that we need to do. There is no doubt that our state in Nevada is in a precarious situation. We unfortunately have been one of the hardest hit states economically in the country as a result of COVID-19. At one point, we faced an unemployment rate of over 30%, one of the highest rates in modern history. And as a previous small business owner myself, I know how important small businesses are to our local and national economy. You create new jobs, you foster our local economy, and you can contribute to the growth and vitality of our state. So I want you to know that while we've done things to help, I know that there's a whole lot more that we need to do as we move from the relief and assistance phase into the recovery phase. Small businesses have to be at the forefront of that. Small businesses in Nevada and throughout the country have looked to the federal government over the last few months for a lifeline during this unprecedented time. And we need to continue to be there for all of you. That is why in March, I voted in favor of the CARES Act, which has, as you know, been signed into law. The bill allocated $349 billion for small business economic injury disaster loans that were made available to small businesses impacted by COVID-19 starting back in April. The CARES Act also established the Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses cover payroll and other expenses during the crisis, with 100% of the amount eligible for forgiveness if employers retain workers. We quickly saw that these funds were in huge demand, which is why I later supported efforts to provide billions of additional funding through the Paycheck Protection and Healthcare Enhancement Act. This second round of funding, we specifically fought to include $10 billion of PPP set aside to be allocated and dispersed through community development financed institutions so that small businesses, minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses could get access to this assistance, because we were finding out that far too many of you were not. I'm proud that to date, Nevada small businesses have received almost 46,000 PPP loans, totaling over $4.2 billion, and almost 40,000 EIDL loans, totaling over $2.1 billion. These programs have been a lifeline, as I said, for many businesses who have faced financial hardships. But aside from these loan programs, the bill also supported small businesses by requiring the SBA to provide additional language resources to help ensure small business owners can access the resources they need regardless of their background. We provided $265 million in funding for resource partners, including the Small Business Development Centers and the Women Business Centers, to provide training and counseling to businesses impacted by the coronavirus. We allocated $10 million for the Minority Business Development Agency to grant funding for training and counsel to minority-owned firms. And I'm very proud that one of those grants has been secured by the College of Southern Nevada in partnership with the Urban Chamber, bringing back a much-needed resource to our community that had gone dormant for the last several years. And we are increasing the number of small businesses that qualify for streamlined bankruptcy process, nearly tripling the debt cap to $7.5 million to help small businesses that may need to reorganize due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, right now, this week, literally, we are in negotiations with the administration and the Senate on another package. We voted in the House on the HEROES Act 4 months ago, which would provide support for small businesses by strengthening the Paycheck Protection Program to help ensure that it reaches underserved communities, nonprofits of all sizes and types, and it responds by providing flexibility to small businesses by, again, providing $10 billion of COVID-19 emergency grants through the EIDL program. Going forward, though, I also hope that we can provide more direct payments to the Nevada families with the second round of direct cash payments to families up to $6,000 per person, another round of paycheck protection measures to keep 60 million workers connected with their jobs and your businesses open, and extending weekly unemployment benefits through next January for those who need it. I also want you to know that I support your measure, the Restart Act. I am also a co-sponsor for the National Small Business Week's resolution, designating next week as National Small Business Week. I'm also a supporter and have voted in the House for the Truth Act, which would have improved transparency in SBA lending, requiring the SBA to identify borrowers with loans above $2 million and explain the decision-making process for loans so that the funds go to the small businesses who need it the most. I'm also a supporter of the Ppp Flexibility Act, which we voted for and has now been signed into law. This gave forgiveness for expenses beyond that 8-week covered period up to 24 weeks and extends the rehiring deadline. It increased the current limitation on non-payroll expenses such as rent, utility payments, and mortgage interest for loans from 25 to 40%. It extended the program to December of 31st of this year, as well as the terms for the program from 2 to 5 years, and it ensures that full access to payroll tax deferment for businesses that take PPP loans. Let me just close by saying, before the coronavirus outbreak, Nevada's 4th District was home to 7,559 small businesses, which employed over 74,000 employees. And I'm proud, Shondell, that you are among those businesses. During the pandemic, small businesses, though, quickly applied for the emergency loans to keep their businesses afloat. And as I mentioned earlier, Nevada received 38,934 emergency injury disaster loans totaling over $2 billion. And for the Paycheck Protection Program, our state received 45,771 loans amounting to over $4.2 billion in funding. These loans have been critical for small businesses, which is why I have supported several efforts to expand funding for these programs. But I know that it's going to take more for us to recover, and it's going to require more investment. So I've been talking about how we are going to build back stronger. And one of the things that I believe that we have to do, we can't just return to normal, because normal wasn't all that great for everybody, including a lot of small businesses that were already on the margins. So these are stressful times. I understand that in addition to running a business, you're facing challenges of health and safety and making sure that you can pay your bills and keep a roof over your head for your family. In order to have a successful economy in the future, we must work to expand opportunities for all small businesses, including minority-owned businesses, specifically African-American, Latinx, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, which actually are some of the fastest growing startup businesses in our country. So as your representative, I'll continue to fight for financial assistance and resources that will allow all small businesses to thrive beyond this pandemic and into the future. And again, I want to thank you for including me in this discussion and look forward to the questions from the participants today.
Thank you, Representative Horsford. Now we've reached the moderator discussion portion of the program, and I see there are questions already in the chat. As a reminder, attendees should raise their hand if they would like to be placed in the queue to speak. You can raise your hand by accessing via the Zoom control panel and clicking raise hand. I will then acknowledge you, and you can unmute your microphone and speak. Stefan will unmute or mute you if you need help. And if you are a member of the media, please identify yourself and the outlet you represent. We're going to actually start first because I see there's a chat from Maisha with a quick question, and it's a really good one too, Congressman. Maisha Williams states, hello, Congressman. Thank you for your advocacy in assisting small businesses in securing emergency PPP and EIDL funding to help keep doors open. What legislation / support is underway to ensure small businesses have the ability to pay back those loans and keep doors open for the long term?
Well, one of the things we're actually trying to do, and I want to commend my colleagues on the Small Business Committee, is to come up with a threshold for people who received EIDL or PPP loans. On average, those loans were about $70,000 to $100,000 on average. So what we're recommending is anything under $150,000 that you're free and clear, that there's no audit, that there's no requirement to produce, any documentation in order to move forward and to have those funds completely forgiven, which will, as you know, right now, they're technically on your books as debt. and this will allow you to free up that on your balance sheet in order to post a stronger financial position going into 2021. So that's one of the major things that we are trying to do. The other thing is through the funding that we've provided from the federal government and the CARES Act, the city of North Las Vegas has developed 2 programs which you can find on their website, NV Cares Small Business Assistance Program. It provides assistance for payroll, for rent, mortgage, utility bills, and there's about $3.25 million that's available during the first phase. They're giving out about $10,000 in grants for approved businesses of 100 to 20 employees and $15,000 grants for approved businesses with 21 to 40 employees. So I definitely encourage those of you who have businesses located in North Las Vegas to pursue that. I also know the Governor's Office of Economic Development provided the Nevada Commercial Rental Assistance Grant up to $10,000 to eligible commercial tenants, which are not required to be paid back. Landlords whose tenants participate in the CREG program, as they call it, will receive payments directly and must agree not to do any eviction proceedings against the tenant for 90 days following the receipt. Now, I know that's now closed for application, but if there are any more funds that become available, that's where it will go. So the way it's worked is, the federal government provided the money to the state and local, and now they're dispersing the funds through their entity. So I would definitely encourage you to contact the Small Business Administration and the local business licensing entities where your business is licensed, either in Clark County, the city of Las Vegas, or the city of North Las Vegas.
Thank you so much. The next question comes from Lisa Vargas. Congressman, thrilled to hear about next week being National Small Business Week. Can you please share what this means exactly?
Well, it's an opportunity for us to remind everybody how important small business is, and for us to showcase small businesses throughout our district, throughout our state, and throughout the country that are doing great work. Some new marketing as an example of a great local family-owned, veteran-owned, minority-owned, now to be woman-owned business, so that people know these are the businesses in our community. It also, traditionally, what we would do is we would go out to the businesses ourselves and patronize the business and encourage people to get out and do the same thing. Obviously, with social distancing and the like, I know that may not be as possible, but I know my team, we're promoting a number of the small businesses in our community so that people know who's open, what services are available, and to help connect customers to those small businesses. So it's all about helping to promote the role, the service, the products that small businesses provide, and to remind everyone in our community that, small businesses are essential. They're essential employers, they're essential in the services and products they provide, and they're essential to our local and national economy.
Thank you so much. Our next one's from Joe Cato from Periwinkle Group. Good afternoon, Congressman. Thank you for advocacy for small business. My question for businesses that were not funded in the CARES Act due to having only a state business license, but not a municipal business license, is there any flexibility in the program to assist those businesses?
So I think you're good to see you or talk to you, Joe, virtually. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for everything you do in our community, and especially with the census. You've been one of the major contractors that's getting the word out about the importance of the census, and part of the census actually plays in with the business community and where businesses choose to locate in the future based on census information. So hi, Joe. But on your question, so the CARES Act money, if you're talking about the PPP or the EIDL money, I don't believe that there's a requirement around the local jurisdiction. If you're talking about the disbursement of funds to the local municipalities, they determine the rules for how they disperse those funds. They have to adhere to certain guidance from the SBA, but the requirements are set by those local entities. So I don't think we have much of a role to play in that regard. But if there's something else that I'm missing, please let us know. You know how to contact us, and we'll be happy to follow up.
Great, thank you. The next is from Ann Zimmerman. Do you have any plans to pass legislation to make PPP proceeds non-taxable by overruling the IRS notice that made related expenses non-deductible? This is contrary to original congressional intent and a tax nightmare.
Yes, I do. I'm a member of the Ways and Means Committee, and so this is actually one of the issues that I will be pursuing with our committee. I believe we are working on this legislation now. So that is something that we want to correct. This should not become a tax liability. And that's another reason why I said we're trying to create this threshold where particularly businesses with that receive loans under 150,000, which overwhelmingly that, people 80% or more were below that threshold, would be just to have it forgiven, for it to not count against you on your balance sheet as a liability, and for it not to be a tax liability against the IRS. But it is something we've got to correct. I agree, it was not our congressional intent, but unfortunately they are interpreting it a little differently.
Thank you so much. There's actually a question from Shondell that we received. Shondell, as a small business owner and small business advocate, what do you think small business owners need to survive this crisis?
Well, thank you for that question, Renee. One of the things that small businesses have to do is really adopt what the Congressman was saying, that there is don't go back to the old days, don't look backward, look forward, because there are great opportunities and with innovation and things that we can do. I had discussions with Maisha, one of my partners with NYS firm, and she and I and Tiara, my daughter, were discussing ways to expand and grow outside of what was the old normal. Whether you do virtual business, some of our restaurant companies have to now think about the fact that they did takeout and to-go orders, and they did that well. Now that you are allowed to bring in a few people, go ahead and expand on that. Go ahead and make it better and make your online ordering to a place where it's more efficient and more effective. What I talk about a lot of times is rebounding by rebranding. And rebranding basically does not mean that you change your logo and your colors and everything, but change the way that your customers perceive you now as a solution to a lot of their problems or challenges that they've had before. So if you are that restaurant, that coffee place that they used to love to attend, make it so that it's easier for them to order from you. Make sure that you're there for them. If you're a behavioral health company, make sure that people know that you're there for their depression, their anxiety, and all of those things. Be a solution to people. Don't worry about, don't get caught up in all of the, I know we are those business owners who worry about everything, but you know what? Put all that stuff back on the Congressman and let him worry about it. Really? That's what I call the some new normal. Put it back on your banker. I see Jerry Merritt there. I make sure give her that problem. Give everybody else, and the chambers, give the chambers a lot of your woes, and allow them to be your partners. Because one thing that people don't think about is that small business owners have a lot to think about, a lot to worry about. And so use your network, use Small Business for America's Future, use the SBDC, use the SBA. There's so many resources, because this, despite what everybody else is saying, this is still the great America. It always has been. It was when I served in the United States Air Force, and it never changed from being a great country. So I think right now we got to remember that, and remember that small businesses are the engine. We're the engine of this economy, and don't let everyone else forget it. Even after the elections, don't let them forget how important we are, and what we mean to this community. So small businesses have to become their own advocates. Small businesses have to be innovative, and small businesses have to show that resiliency that we've always shown through all kind of depressions and recessions. So that's what I think.
Thank you so much, Shondell. Congressman, we have another question. When it comes to aid and loans, there is some confusion about what needs to be paid back and when. How should small businesses approach their repayment plans?
Very deliberately and cautiously, I'd say, because you don't want to get caught in doing something and then unfortunately be disqualified, because we're trying to push for another round of funding, right? So don't do something that then puts you in a position to not be eligible for future funding. For EIDL, for example, the terms are right now you have to pay back everything, and it's not forgivable. The loan term is over 30 years with a very small interest rate, and payments can be deferred for a year. Again, we're constantly reviewing that. The Small Business Committee is having hearings on that. So if there are issues, please let me know. For the PPP, the loan will be fully forgiven if the funds are used for payroll cost, interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities. At least 60% of the forgiven amount must have been used for payroll. That we reduced down from the 75%, I believe it was, when we first passed the law. Loan forgiveness is based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining salary levels based on what was in your application. Forgiveness will be reduced if full-time headcount declines or if salaries or wages decrease. And again, we know for certain businesses like restaurants, that's been a particularly hard thing to do, and we are still trying to work on additional legislation for severely impacted sectors like the restaurant sector. So I strongly encourage every small business owner to keep an accurate and detailed record of how they used their PPP funds. There's information on SBA's website that lays out all of the terms that you need to adhere to so that your PPP loan can be fully forgiven, or so that you can be eligible if we are successful in getting a second round out. And if you're a business that didn't get funded for the first round, we're also fighting to get another round of money for those businesses to prioritize them in the second round.
Thank you so much. We have some more questions that seem like in the same theme, it looks like. So I'll try to put it all together, but it looks like more of like, how are Nevada small businesses compared with small businesses across the country doing? I know we touched on, the ranking compared to other states with the PPP funding Nevada has received compared to other states. So how is this like unique for the economy of Las Vegas specifically to Nevada? And also, how has Las Vegas comparatively been impacted by the pandemic?
So there were some real structural problems to begin with. As many of you know, initially the Treasury had a guidance that said that small businesses that received any portion of their revenue from gaming revenue could not qualify to apply. And by the time we got that corrected and got Treasury to issue new guidance, the fund was almost out. And then the second round of money came out. So that was a big problem. It got fixed, but it got fixed with a delay that hurt Nevada. The second thing I found out in speaking to the Bankers Association and the CDFIs is, and Jerry Merritt can maybe expound upon this, is that we don't have as many chartered banks in Nevada, and we only have a limited number of CDFIs in Nevada. So where other states, even smaller states, they were in a better position because they had more institutions that met the eligible criteria to be one of the lenders who could get these funds dispersed. The other thing is not all of the, particularly CDFIs, had the access to capital that they needed to be able to front the money, because literally they dispersed it and then got reimbursed by the SBA. So those are all structural things. I've actually raised some of these concerns with the governor and some of our legislative leadership, because those are state policies that are going to need to be corrected in future sessions of the legislature in order to better position Nevada to pursue these dollars as we proceed. I know the city, for example, of Las Vegas, they started a CDFI in the last few years. That's great. And they've been able to provide a lot of services, but we've got to get more resources like that. The other thing is, we are heavily dependent on tourism and hospitality. And even many of our small businesses, on average, get about a third of their revenues in one way or another, directly or indirectly, from the tourism and hospitality industry or workers from that industry. So when they're hurt, it hurts all the rest of us. So I think that is another structural issue. We've known about this forever, about the need to diversify our economy and have other sectors that would sustain us when and if the tourism and hospitality industry is not doing well. But I want you to know that, during the entire part of this, I advocated through we send congressional oversight letters to the Small Business Administration, to Treasury. I actually testified in front of the House Small Business Committee about my frustration with the denial of the PPP funding when that was in place because of the gaming issue, and pushed them to remove that language so that all Nevada businesses could access PPP. Which ultimately, did result after that pressure that all of us in our Nevada delegation put on them. But this is why we need all of you to stay active, because this is something that we heard directly from small businesses that you wanted us to address. And fortunately we did, but it was something that had we not had the issue to begin with, we probably would have gotten even more small businesses approved for funding.
Yeah, thank you. Want to ask this question. I'm seeing some themes coming through again. Some of the biggest challenges among open businesses are accessing the capital they need to stay afloat, keeping their supply lines open, making sure their employees can work remotely, and balancing increased family demands. What does this mean for the economy in Las Vegas with so many business owners as we head into the second wave of the pandemic?
Just so I clarify the question there, please.
Basically, what can we look for small businesses, especially within the Las Vegas economy, as we're probably not going to have another package from Congress as we're going into the second wave of this pandemic?
Well, honestly, there's actually been a bit of a break in the last just few days around whether or not there's going to be another relief package. The president has indicated he wants one. And the House, we voted on our package, the HEROES Act, 4 months ago. So they're literally in negotiations. We are going to be voting on a package to fund the federal government through a continuing resolution. So I would put the chances of about 50-50 that there could very well be a package before the election. If there's not one before the election, for whatever reason, there will be one, I believe, before the end of this year. There's no reason for us not to continue to act. Again, I'm a member of the Ways and Means Committee, so we get a lot of these briefings. The Federal Reserve is putting trillions of dollars into the economy to help our biggest industries and Wall Street stay solvent. We have to do that from Congress, and the Federal Reserve Chairman just said this in testimony this week, that they're doing everything they can from the Federal Reserve to address Wall Street and some of those the bigger industries, but Congress has to act on the fiscal needs of Main Street. And so I am imploring my colleagues that we have to come together. I'm not chasing a number. It's not about, is it 3 trillion or is it 1 trillion? It's what does it do? We need to extend unemployment for those workers who can't go back to work because there's no job for them to go back to. We need to do another round of PPP for businesses that got one or that didn't. We need to provide COBRA healthcare coverage for up to 15 months, 100% paid for both the employer side and the employee contribution, because people cannot lose their healthcare in the middle of the pandemic. That's actually my bill that I'm a sponsor of. And we have to fund state and local government, because if we don't, Nevada, for example, we're facing over $1.2 billion revenue shortfall in our state budget. Well, what does that fund? It funds educators, it funds public safety, it funds nurses and caseworkers, it funds social services. And if they have to start cutting those services, or God forbid, laying people off, that's going to make our recovery even harder. So my point is, we've supported, and I have, on a bipartisan basis, the legislation that we've enacted to date. That included trillions of funding, some of which I didn't always agree with, but I knew that we needed to do it in order to save our economy and to get us through the most difficult portions. So to answer the question, we have to do something. The alternative is not acceptable. Now, beyond relief and assistance, we have to start thinking about recovery. And I know one of the questions is the infrastructure bill. I'm a sponsor, and the House did approve the Moving Forward Act. It's the most comprehensive investment in infrastructure that has ever been passed by the House, not just for roads, bridges, and highways, but for broadband, for community health centers, for funding for our public schools. All of this would be a major investment, a Marshall Plan level investment, if you will, to help put and keep people in their jobs, but also invest in these critical infrastructure things that we need to help restart our economy. So that's very, very important.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I think we want to talk a little more too, particularly about resources, particularly in your district. What resources are available to small business owners in your district specifically? I know we talk about like the SBA. I know we're talking generally about the state of Nevada, but like what is in Nevada District 4?
Well, one thing I'm really excited about is that we are getting back the Minority Business Development Agency because of a grant that the College of Southern Nevada applied for in partnership with the Urban Chamber and other local businesses. And that was a resource that we had not had for the last few years for whatever reason. And so that is going to augment the Nevada Grow program that the College of Southern Nevada has already been doing. I know many of the business people on this call were big advocates of that through the Nevada legislature and the leadership of Assemblywoman Dina Neal, the next state senator in District 4, and other people who also supported that legislation. And so those are the resources that we are bringing to help build out support specifically for women, minority, veteran-owned businesses. Look, I support everybody. My district is very diverse, and I will be a champion for all of small business. But when you look at the disparate treatment of women entrepreneurs, of particularly Black and Latinx women that are starting their businesses, the needs that veteran-owned businesses have that are unique, we have to target those resources specifically to them. One of the things I'm pushing, I just met with the new commander out at Nellis. I know we have good, strong partnerships with Nellis, but quite honestly, I've told them they've got to do a better job of contracting out with local minority and women and veteran-owned businesses in our community. I advocate for the passage of the National Defense Authorization Act, which helps provide more money to Nellis and Creech. I want them to be able to tell me how many of those local businesses in my community got a contract. Again, I get it. I was a small business owner myself, so I know it's not just access to capital; it's access to a contract. It's not just about getting a loan from a bank. You got to have a contract to take to the bank to be able to show them that you have something that is worth investing in. So to me, it's about access to these contracts. And unfortunately, with the downturn in our economy, it's going to be a bit harder, going forward. So we're going to have to be more creative. And there is a big federal role, and the Moving Forward Act and the Restart Act that you guys are champions of are examples of what we need to get behind and support.
Thank you, Congressman. Shondell, I know you're a small business owner in the district. Would love to bring you into this conversation too and get some of your thoughts as well.
Well, the congressman is absolutely right. There's some things that, he was actually in the incubator at the Urban Chamber of Commerce. The Urban Chamber of Commerce is in his district. So the Urban Chamber has resources to include the SBA, SBDC, and we have a strong partnership with the College of Southern Nevada, which is managing that MBDA. Ken Evans is sitting on the Stadium Authority Board, and he's doing something called the Community Benefits Plan, which I want you to be encouraged, because I'm telling you, I'm always bragging about Nevada for a reason. Like, Nevada's legislators are on fire. Just recently, when we brought in the Raider Stadium, we put together something called SB1. SB1 required 15% participation of small businesses on all contracts, from construction to operations to maintenance. I'm proud to say that yesterday I smiled from ear to ear as Ken Evans, our president of the chamber, was talking about $300 million that were procured out to small businesses in Nevada. That's an amazing number. Just to put it in perspective, sometimes that's one project. So think about the fact that during the last 18 to 24 months, there has been a great amount of revenue passed down through small businesses. And then because of the community benefits plan, just like Congressman Horsford is talking about with Nellis Air Force Base, we specifically looked at businesses that needed procurement contracts and needed opportunities. And I think that's part of even what Maisha was alluding to. Maisha is working on the stadium contract by way of SB1. So a lot of opportunities, and a lot of the things that we need as small businesses is not just access to capital, but access to contracts and legislation that pushes contracts to those marginalized communities so that we can create more jobs. And I know, like Joe Cato is very, very strong in advocacy in that area. She has been really working hard at the county to make sure the CARES Act dollars, there are not limitations. She works very hard to make sure there are not limitations on those dollars getting to the community. So we have a wealth of strong business partners, strong organizations right there in his district. So, and that's because I think he's been a strong leader and advocate for the smallest of businesses. So that's why we thrive the way we do.
Thank you, Shondell, and shout out to Maisha there, and also to Karen. Wanted to bring you into the conversation too, because I see you joined in the chat here with the Nevada SBDC at the Urban Chamber, and wanted you to just talk a little bit about what you guys do. So if you want to unmute yourself real quick and just provide some information for those who are on the call today about what you guys do and the services you provide real quick.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for including me. Well, we're always proud to partner with the Urban Chamber, and of course, Congressman Horsford's been a great support to the Nevada SBDC. Our resources are free. During the COVID crisis, we really were a lot of boots on the ground. We helped over about 1,400, just since March, 1,400 small businesses obtained $22 million in CARES funding through the EIDL and the PPP. We're really actively working with those folks that got PPP and EIDL loans to make sure with the PPP they get max forgiveness. So we have tools in place, to help those small businesses make sure they get the max forgiveness on those loans. And we're here also, you know, unfortunately during a disaster, we have tons of disaster resources that we provide. If you need help negotiating bankruptcy, which we hope you don't, we can provide that along with legal and any other resources available. Again, you know, we're SBA funded, and we're grateful to be out there in Nevada with boots on the ground at the Urban Chamber, helping out small businesses with whatever they might need. So thanks for including me.
And I want to thank Karen, and I know you guys came to DC before we got locked down, but really the importance of the census. We have 13 days left, and there better not be anybody on this call that hasn't already done their census. But really the information about how the census affects small businesses, access to grants, funding, training, where the data goes ultimately to help small businesses decide where you're going to locate. Again, I want us to start thinking the next year to 5 years and the recovery, because that's where the focus needs to be. And sometimes, Sean, you know, we sit around and we talk, and unfortunately, sometimes some of our businesses get the information late, or we don't get included on where things are going. And so part of what I want to be is a resource to help people know how to position themselves for what that future is. You know, we're going to be voting next week on the Green Jobs Act, a major investment around renewable, a lot of investment there, obviously the infrastructure bill. But there's going to be a big emphasis around healthcare for the foreseeable future. And so as Shondell and others were saying, how do you position your business for those future opportunities? But the census is so critical in all of this. And I think many of you know, I've been chairing a task force on the census. We have a response rate of Nevada of about 68%, which is good. It's on average above the national average, but just think of that. There are still about 30, I think they told me there were about 30 million households across the country that still haven't been counted. And that's a lot of money we're leaving on the table. And I don't mean 30 million households in Nevada, 30 million households across the country that haven't been counted. And that's a lot of federal dollars we're leaving on the table that doesn't get dispersed, including money for small businesses. So whatever you can do to make sure that word gets out these final few days, we really do appreciate it. Again, thank you to Joe and others who are working on that message for the state of Nevada.
Thank you. And you know what? This is a good segue as well for the last question. But that does not mean the conversation has to stop here. So we'll get into that in a second. But for the last question for the Congressman, what can small business owners in Las Vegas do who are impacted by the pandemic? And I think the resources into this question is a great last question.
Well, first, you can just stay in touch with us. Definitely visit our website at horsford.house.gov. You can follow us on all of our social media platforms. We have advisory councils that I meet with very regularly around our various constituency groups. So we have for veteran, for women, the Latino community, but for small businesses across every demographic. And we want you to participate. Again, I know it's hard sometimes because if you're a small business owner, you're busy doing your work for your business. And a lot of times it's hard to free up some time, but just know that it's your voice that really does make change. And I really do value having your perspective. My team will tell you this all the time. I know Levante and Angeline are on the call. I always ask before I vote on a bill, what does this do for Nevada? And is there a Nevada business? Is there a Nevada constituent that we can tell the story of how this bill impacts us? Because otherwise, it really doesn't do me any good to just be voting on legislation if I can't point to a business or to a person that literally benefits from the legislation. And we need you to help us connect those dots. And if it's something isn't working, that's another way to also get that change. So if things aren't working for you for in a particular program, let us know that too, because we're open to constructive criticism, and the federal government is not perfect by any means, and we're working to try to hold it accountable and make it better. But those are some ideas for how you can be involved.
Thank you so much. Well, this concludes our roundtable discussion. Thank you, Representative Horsford, for joining us today. And thank you to all of our small business owners who joined and asked such thoughtful questions. Thank you to our co-chair, Shondell. We appreciate you for being here. We're so grateful for all of you. Please stay safe and healthy out there. I'll turn it back over to Stefan, who will now close us out. But also, don't forget to look in the chat. Congressman Horsford's, I believe, Chief of Staff has put their information for you guys to connect to his office as well. Stefan, turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. And again, thank you everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, Congressman Horsford. And like we said, we would love for you to stay engaged with us. So there's our email. Email us at staff@smallbusinessforamericasfuture.org. We'd love to stay in touch, hear your stories, and just see how more and better that we can help you and help small businesses across the country. So with that, stay safe, stay healthy. Everyone have a fabulous weekend. And thank you so much for joining. Take care.
Ay, puta, más marica, ¿para dónde?